Hardspace Shipbreaker is a first-person zero-G spaceship salvaging game. You play a shipbreaker at Morgan Station. It's a blue-collar job. You're punching the clock every single day. You get paid for your work. You punch the clock, go back to your hab, and then the next morning you wake up and you do it again.
And it's roughly modeled after the Gilded Age of America, where civilization was expanding across this new frontier. And so in Hardspace, humanity is spread through most of the solar system. And so you have people that live on Mars or on the moons of Jupiter, that kind of thing. And that's where all of the rich people mostly have gone to live. And so Earth has become this backwater. And you really want to just escape that squalor. And so you took this job, this extremely hazardous job with the Lynx Corporation to tear apart these ships.
But we also wanted to kind of play around with the corporation thing, and one thing that we could all relate to on the dev side of things was this idea of being in debt. And it's not something that you really realize until you get there to the station, and it's kind of in the fine print of the contract. Like, we've all signed EULAs where you tick a box and you're like, yeah, whatever, I just need, and you hit submit, but how many of us actually read those kinds of things? Well, we wanted to kind of have a play with that, and if you do read the contract in the beginning of the game, there is some fine print there.
You're an employee of Lynx in the game. They own you, essentially, they own your DNA. So you might try and escape this hard work that they've got you indentured into by dying. You're out of luck, because they have your DNA, they can just reassemble you, and whenever you die in the game, boom, you're straight back in for another go.
And so to do that, you have this cutting torch, the big heavy-duty tool that you've been equipped with in the yard, and you can go in, you can split any object in the game. You can approach it from any direction, and it was a huge technical challenge for us to be able to go in and say the player can aim in any direction and split something apart in any way that they want. And how do we maintain physical accuracy with that? Does that thing light on fire now? Does it melt? Does it just vaporize into nothing? It's probably the single biggest attention to detail that we've tried to do in this project.
We knew we wanted to tell a bit of a different story, flipping things on their head a bit, where we were looking at what was really cool and exciting about being just a worker in this universe, basically. If you look at people that work on oil rigs, or even going back to the early skyscraper photos of people way up on girders hanging over New York, there was something there that spoke to the team.
So what we do is we look at some references for that. Cowboy Bebop was one of them. Was it Black Gold was another one, the documentary about oil rig workers. Yeah, and we started to seed that into the game itself. So we really tried to ground the environment to be this kind of like blue collar setting. So for example, the dockyard that the player actually works in is an approximation of a real life dry dock that you'll see shipbreakers working, ship repairmen working.
Maybe you're pretty badass because you're not Master Chief, you're not the ultimate badass in this universe. You're someone that maybe no one's looking at, but is actually a total badass and taking these immense risks and being incredibly brave to really just help people and help humanity expand out into the universe.
When we were showing it at PAX, we had a guy that came up and he's an actual shipbreaker. He worked for the US Navy out of Alaska, and he was like, I heard about your game and I came to check it out because I actually break ships. And we were all like, what? And then he played the game, and he came afterwards and came up to us and seemed to be having fun, and we were like, yeah, right on. And he came up and then he was like, you know, guys, I gotta say, it's kind of like my day job, you know? Yeah, only it's in space. And we're like, perfect, that's amazing.
One of the beautiful things in the narrative kind of devices that we've got in the game is in most games you go out to the world and you experience the story of how the game takes place. Well, in Hardspace Shipbreaker, the story comes to you by way of these ships. And in each one of these ships we have PDAs and we have audio logs that you can kind of discover, and they're almost like messages in a bottle from crew members and from some of the stories of where this ship has been, who made it, what did it do while it was out there. And slowly but surely, the more ships that you break down and these more stories that you collect and that you listen to, you start piecing together all of the puzzle pieces that make up the Hardspace universe.
So Blackbird culture has been one of, I like to call it a garage culture. It's very, I mean, we've grown quite a bit in the years that I've been here. Obviously, you have to layer in some corporateness in order to have a studio that runs at this size. But Blackbird has always maintained that kind of gritty, like coming from the garage, incorporating everyone's ideas, collaborative type environment.
Well, it's really important to us to get the community involved because we want to make the best game we possibly can. And, you know, we all play games, we love games, we have ideas of what we want this game to be, but that doesn't mean that we're the only ones with ideas and the only ones with great ideas. And part of the reason is that we're a very small team. You know, we're 20-ish people at any given time. So we have limited bandwidth and we have limited brain power. And so if we can harness the global brain power of all our fans around the world, we feel like we can really generate something fantastic.
With Shipbreaker, you're actually dynamically cutting panels and then it's creating physics objects, and no one has done that. No one has created a massive starship and then allowed you to set off a reactor and watch the chain reaction as fuel lines explode, and the whole thing is dynamically exploding in front of you as it would in space as it's decompressing. No one has done that. The opportunity that a lot of players are going to have is to experience something that they've never seen before. This is not a slightly better version of a first-person shooter you've played many times. This is a completely unique experience.